Good morning, everyone. I hope that you can hear me well. And I'd like to welcome you to this learning and sharing webinar that we're hosting today. My name is Steph McGillivray, and I'm the Officer Promoting Women's Leadership here at Caritas Internationalis. And this learning and sharing webinar, How to Make Space to Learn from the Poor, is part of our week of prayer and action in celebration of the World Day of the Poor and World Youth Day. Today marks the halfway point in this week, and in the From Prayer to Action calendar, which you can find on the Caritas Internationalis website, you'll see that our focus today is on promoting sustainable integral human development and care for creation. Just a quick note that if you're joining us from YouTube and if you do need translation, because this webinar will be in English, if you need translation, you can go over to the Caritas Internationalis website, and on the calendar, you will see the Zoom registration where translations will be available. So the themes of integral human development and care for creation intersect particularly well with our webinar today, as we focus on making space for and building genuine relationships with poor, marginalized, and vulnerable members of our society, and in turn, nurturing a society which is founded on the principle of shared and equal human dignity. In his message for the 2021 World Youth Day, Pope Francis points out that God did not suppress the personality or passionate zeal of St. Paul, but rather he brought those gifts of his to full flower by making him a great herald of the gospel to the very ends of the earth. In his 2021 World Day of the Poor message, Pope Francis reminds us that we must allow ourselves to be evangelized by people who are living in poverty. This is to say, all of us, including and especially the more vulnerable members of our society, have valuable gifts to put at the service of God and others. Today, we come together to reflect on this, to share our experiences about how we are currently living out this mission, and to ask ourselves and each other some questions about what more we can do in the service of the integral development of those living in poverty. Do you know how to see potential in others? Do you know how to make space for everyone to share their gifts with you? In today's webinar, two members of Caritas Youth will share their experiences, thoughts, and ideas about how we can truly make room for others and recognize the value of their input as we serve our communities. So today, I'm delighted to introduce to you our two speakers, Maria Loza Tapuelu from Caritas Tonga and Vincent Tentani from Caritas Malawi. Maria Loza is a project officer with Caritas Tonga. She has worked for Caritas for 4 years, and in her role, she develops and implements disaster awareness training and community development training. She also develops policies to guarantee fair distribution of project assistance. She's currently working on Caritas Tonga's Sustainable Development Fund project, which seeks to develop the skills of community groups in traditional crafts making and planting, which helps families financially. She recently became the youth representative on the Regional Commission of Caritas Oceania, and she represents the youth in the region in that governance body. Our second speaker, Vincent, is a project officer with Caritas Malawi, and he has worked there for 2 years. In this role, he oversees resource mobilization and quality control for humanitarian, education, and livelihood projects and programs, and helps to build the capacities of staff in the diocese where he works. He also facilitates training in asset-based community development and collaborates with various stakeholders at a national and international level. So Without further ado, I will soon hand over to our two speakers. Malia Losa has pre-recorded her presentation for us, and so she will be introduced by Sophie Jenkins, who is another representative from Karatas Oceania. But before we begin with our speakers, I think that we should prepare ourselves in prayer, asking for God's blessing on this meeting. We will pray today's prayer from the calendar for our week of prayer and action, so please do join in if you have it with you. Today's prayer has been written by the Karatas Oceania Youth Alliance. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Creator of all goodness, as a symbol of greatness, you created a beautiful blue moana to be our home. As an expression of your beauty, a greenery lush of islands and continent emerged. As a reminder of peace, you enriched it with fertile tropical uniqueness, full of life. As a sign of hope for creation, you bestowed a rainbow of cultures and peoples as your stewards. God of love, enlighten us of the sacredness of your creation. Inspire us to be able to clearly see your goodness. Renew us, the youth of today, so that we may have the courage to stand up as your witnesses, to help sustain and care for all of your creation. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. So, without further ado, I would like to hand over to Sophie Jenkins, who will introduce Malia Losa's presentation. Thank you, Sophie.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Stephanie, for the introduction. I'm joining this call this evening from the lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the first peoples and traditional custodians of the land known today as Sydney, Australia. I would like to start by paying my deepest respect to elders past, present and emerging, and to the Indigenous peoples of all of the lands from which we are gathered here this evening. It is my great pleasure to be here with you and introduce a presentation prepared by my colleague Malia Losa, who will be sharing with us an approach to dialogue and communal decision-making common to many parts of the Pacific, known as Talanoa. Talanoa reflects a process of inclusive, participatory and transparent dialogue, the purpose of which is to share stories, build empathy, and to make wide decisions for the collective good. It's an approach to dialogue that has been adapted from the community level up to intergovernmental decision-making, including through the Talanoa dialogues in the lead up to COP23 in 2018. Tonight, Malia Losa will share with us the concept of Talanoa, the key principles that underpin this approach, and importantly, how these principles can be applied within our global Karatas family to ensure that we are listening genuinely and meaningfully to the voices of those most marginalised. Let us now hear from Malia Losa, who has pre-recorded the following video for us today.
And a very warm Pacific greetings from the heart of Oceania. My name is Malia Losa Tabueluelu from the friendly island kingdom of Tonga. Tonga is a small country in the Pacific Ocean with only over 105,000 population. Uniquely, Tonga is the only Pacific nation that has never been colonized by foreign power and has never lost its indigenous governance. I work as the program officer of Karatas Tonga, and I have been with Karatas Tonga for over 4 years now. Karatas Tonga is the agent of the Catholic Diocese of Tonga and Niue for justice, peace, development, relief, and social services. Why is it important to listen to the voices of the most vulnerable? It is because they are weak, unprotected, defenseless, insecure, helpless, and at a risk to any form of confliction and difficulties. There was this piece from the message of our Holy Father on the Word of Day 2021, which I believe it's relevant to this theme. Arise, uphold social justice, truth, and integrity, human rights. Protect the persecuted, the poor, the most vulnerable, and those that have no voices in the society. We can only do this if we have the time to listen to them, to hear their cries, and understand the reason behind their deeds, and to respect their opinions and concern. We can do this in a very approachable way, like hosting a Dalanoa or a friendly dialogue where everyone felt belonged. Dalanoa is a commonly used concept, particularly in the Pacific Islands, in Fiji, Samoa, and here in Tonga throughout many generations. To Dalanoa means to hold a conversation. It is a methodology used to engage inclusive and participatory dialogue. Fofola ai fala kai Dalanoa ai kainga is a uniquely Tongan conceptual framework. It means to roll out the mat so the kainga or the family comes together to Dalanoa. Family in the Tongan context can be extended from immediate family to the extended family. Dalanoa is very important as it is an invitation to the family member or the kainga or the community member to all come together, be seated, one and all on the mat, to Dalanoa to arrive in an adequate solution. The fala or the mat signifies family, grounding, or safe space. The fe'unu or the strand that I used to weave the mat represents Tonga code and values, which is respect, humility, loyalty, molding of good and respectful relationship, and also the passion to ensuring completion. It is a safe space without hierarchical order, where people should not fear nor intimidation, where everyone felt belonged and comfortable to speak. Even the group of people that are being labeled vulnerables, such as women, single mothers, children, young people, or elderly, have something to say or to contribute. It is important to hold such conversation to ensure that the voices of these people, the poor of the poor, or the most vulnerable people, are being heard and differences are being solved. Karatas Tonga has recently piloted free trainings in free communities. The training was a participatory approach for safe shelter awareness and a Build Back Safer training. When we did the consultations of the training, we make sure that the religious councils or the religious authorities have a fair understanding of the principles and values of our Karatas work and the people that we are aimed and targeted to benefit from the training. The trainings were aimed to build a more resilient Tonga, focusing on shelter resilience. The invited participants were a true reflection of the community, whereas disabilities, women and youth, elderlies, and other groups were being represented. Because we believe to build a more resilient community or more resilient Tonga, it is their people that is priority to be resilient themselves. As a facilitator, it was my role to ensure that each participant were given the opportunity to share, to contribute their knowledges and experiences to the discussions or the Dalanoa. During the discussions or the Dalanoa throughout the training, we see that there are still some people that feel insecure or feel uncomfortable to speak. So we put up a board with a chart labeled the parking lot. In this parking lot, everyone was free to and allowed to write anything they wanted without others knowing. In this parking lot, they're allowed or free to write whatever it is relevant or necessary about the discussions during the training. There's some they write, so they need further discussions on some issues. They need to go back to another topic for further clarifications and so on. After each Delano session, we collect the parking lot charts and bring it back to the office, evaluate on it, and see what these people, the people that weren't able to speak, wanted from us as facilitators or the group as a whole, and address it on the next Delano session. We believe that this was effective as a group discussion or a Delano in the community, because sometimes people don't feel, the vulnerable people don't feel comfortable to speak most of the times, but they are comfortable to write what they need of us on a piece of paper or come straight to us or put it on this parking lot for us to address. This was very effective also because it helps us also to improve our facilitator skills, and it also helps us to gain more knowledge and experiences throughout the Delano sessions in the training. One participant from one of the communities was a mother who was in a wheelchair. She shared how delighted and pleasant she was to be part of this training or the Delano session, as it enabled her to know more about building skills and how to be resilient herself. She shared with the skills that she gained, or the little knowledge that she gained. She believes that no builder or carpenter will ever trick her or cheat on her if ever any renovation or retrofitting job will be done on her house. With that, we believe that not only we successfully delivered the training through this Delano session, but it also helps us strengthen our capacity, the office's capacity. And it also helps us when we go from community to community. We gained different knowledge from each community going to another community throughout the sharing of experiences and knowledges with these groups of people. Our Delano concept is very important, and it can be contextualized in other regions. This methodology is to draw people closer together, have time to listen, to understand, and respect each other's opinion. Focus on the process, not just the outcomes. Delano dialogues do not necessarily have a set time frame or set outcomes. Delano dialogues is a space is held for as long as necessary to reach a solution. This is important as it allows unexpected outcomes to arise from the dialogue. Within development and humanitarian work, we are often focused on the outcomes. This is important. It helps us to understand and work towards the positive changes we hope to achieve. However, this approach teaches us the importance of participatory and meaningful processes in enabling all voices to be heard. By listening to diverse voices, we can better understand the vulnerabilities and challenges people face, and can therefore have deeper impact through our work. Take time to listen. Linked to the previous point, we need to take time and hold spaces of dialogue for as long as we need to truly hear from and listen to those most vulnerable. True listening takes time, and concepts of time differ from place to place, from culture to culture. Recognizing this allows us to build in adequate time in our projects, allowing for reflection, dialogue, and feedback throughout. Respect. We need to respect cultural approaches to dialogue and decision making. This is particularly important for organizations that work internationally or across multiple cultural contexts. We also need to recognize when aspects of culture can exclude certain voices. For example, in some parts of the Pacific, traditional decision-making spaces do not always allow for the voices of women and young people to be heard. However, by understanding different concepts of leadership, influence, and decision-making that exist, we can work with deep respect for culture while ensuring our own work creates spaces for these voices to be heard. As a young person in a young generation, we are not the future, as we all know. We are the now. The future is only made of us. Poverty and vulnerable is in everywhere and is among us. And it is our noble duty and responsibilities to be their voices, their strength, to hold their hand and journey together, because we believe in the future together, a future that is better and safer for everyone, especially the poor, of the poor, and the most vulnerable, as they are the hearts of our work, the hearts of our Karatas mission. Ofato Malo Albito.
Thank you, Malialosa, for that rich overview and for your reflections on how Talanoa as an approach to dialogue and decision-making can truly support the participation of those most vulnerable, and for sharing your rich reflections on the cultures of the Pacific and what they can offer our Karatas family. With that, I will pass back to you, Stephanie. Thank you.
Thank you to Sophie for introducing Malialosa, and thank you very much to Malialosa for making us all aware of, as Sophie said, such a rich cultural contribution towards listening and dialogue. So we will now move straight on to our next speaker, who is Vincent Tentani from Karatas, Malawi. I should add that there will be some short time for discussion and questions after this. So if you have questions, feel free to write them in the chat box, but you can also obviously ask us at the end. So I will hand straight over to Vincent. Thank you. Vincent, if you could just unmute yourself, I think it's still muted.
Okay, hello everyone. Let me just share my screen. Oops. Okay. All right, hello everyone. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, we can see now. Thank you.
All right. Um, okay. Welcome back again. As already indicated, this is Vincent Tentani from Caritas Malawi, and I am going to present something on how can we incorporate the poor into our programs of each and everyday lives. Well, Malawi as a country has over approximately 19 million people, of which about 50.7% are living below the poverty line, and 25% are living in extreme poverty with, of course, $1.9 per day. 80% of this population are living in rural areas. And we should know that Malawi is an agro-based country, of which the economy mainly is dependent on the agricultural sector. Caritas Malawi is a social arm of the church in the country. So, as a social arm of the church in the country, it has a lot of strategic areas which it focuses on in order to build the capacity of the people, and also to make sure that the evangelization of the gospel is also manifested in all its operations. There are a number of strategic areas that Caritas Malawi focuses on. We have food security and nutrition. We have also water, hygiene and sanitation. We have relief and rehabilitation. We have climate change adaptation. Hello? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Vincent, we do have a copy of your presentation here if you'd like us to share it from our screen if your phone is giving you some trouble.
Yes, I have the copy. I've shared with Rebecca. If it's okay, you can share from that side.
Okay, I think if you stop sharing your screen, we'll share your presentation from here, and then you can speak from that if that's okay.
All right.
Great.
All right, that's fine.
Great, thanks. Okay, we're ready for you to continue. Thank you. And if you just let us know when you'd like us to move on to the next slide, we'll do that. Thanks.
All right, thanks. All right. I was talking about the strategic areas which Caritas Malawi focuses on, and I was saying that apart from the security, food security, water, hygiene, and sanitation, we have disaster risk and reduction. We also have lobbying and advocacy, because we have also other cross-cutting issues such as gender, disability, and the likes. Okay, we can move on. Okay, so Karatas Malawi, being a social arm of the church, as I said at the beginning, it's also it makes sure that the evangelization of the gospel is also realized in all its operations, and through its projects, different projects. Karatas Malawi does not segregate in the selection of these participants. It goes beyond the religious boundaries to select its participants in the projects. And it also follows the strategic plan and the strategic policies, institutional policies that push much emphasis on the need to incorporate the most vulnerable people in the society. We also recognize that the church also teaches us the preferential option for the poor. So Karatas Malawi in all its works also recognizes this fact. Next slide. Now, who are the poor? The poor can be defined in this case in two different ways. We can define the poor through the social perception, which define the poor perhaps in mentally or sometimes in material perceptions. However, we can also define the poor through church perception, and the church recognizes or defines the poor as the most vulnerable people in the society. And of course, we cannot learn out from the fact that the church also recognizes someone or the participants to be poor in spirit. That's on the religious point of view. So Karatas Malawi is always set to address and incorporate all these definitions of the poor. It seeks to help the poor who are maybe defined on a social perceptions, and also those who have been defined perhaps on religious perceptions. Next slide. Now, what does the Karatas Malawi do to accommodate the poor? We have so many activities, so many interventions that we use as Karatas Malawi to incorporate the views and ideas of the poor and make them recognize that their presence and their ideas in the society or in each and every developmental work in the society are being accounted for. So from the social point of view, Karatas Malawi involves all the local institutions in its project's implementation. In these local institutions, we refer to perhaps the area development committees, the village development committees. These are mostly reached out by the Karatas from the designing stage of the projects, perhaps up to the maybe evaluation, end of the project evaluation. All these institutions, local institutions, are greatly involved. From the same social point of view, we also provide technical support and capacity buildings to the members of the community. These are the members of the community who are also directly benefiting from different projects that Karatas Malawi is doing. As I said at the beginning, we have so many strategic areas in which Karatas Malawi is working on. So let's take an example of climate change adaptations and mitigations. Karatas Malawi will always go down to the local communities, to the members of the communities, and offer some training to build their capacity to know what climate change is all about, what adaptations can they put in place in order to survive the hardships that comes to climate change. We also give another support, let's say financial support to local communities who are most vulnerable, especially the poor in this case. They are given support, let's say loans, the VSLs, that's the village saving banks. They are given startup kits so that after maybe a year or so, they should be standing on their own. They should be, their financial status should be well, should be built so that the poverty line which they used to be have improved. From the spiritual point of view, Karatas Malawi, through the implementation of the strategic plan, which has been developed, this strategic plan has been developed with much emphasis on the preparation option for the poor. So in the implementation of all the projects, Karatas Malawi also makes sure that the strategic plan is put in place so that all the activities are aligned within the strategic plan, and the poor and the most vulnerable people in the societies are benefiting or are getting the benefits of all the projects which they need to benefit. We have also some institutional policies which Karatas Malawi is using or is following or implementing. These policies also ensures that the preparation option for the poor or the most vulnerable groups of people in the community, such as the poor, the elderly, the disability people, all of them are being included. Their ideas are being included in the implementation of all the projects. We also trickle down to the small Christian communities as a church commission. Karatas Malawi makes sure that it works with all the people, starting from the small Christian communities and then going up to the parishes and even deaneries. So as I said also at the beginning, we should note that Karatas Malawi goes beyond the boundary of religion, because it works with everyone irrespective of their culture, ethnicity, religions, or even age. So as youth, we also make sure that in all the projects, implementation projects, activities, project interventions, the most vulnerable people are being heard and their voices are being incorporated in the implementation of such projects. Next slide. How do we do this? How do we accommodate the poor? So we accommodate the poor through three main approaches that I've shared. The first one, Karatas Malawi always uses the strength-based approach. This strength-based approach is an approach that empowers the most vulnerable people and the marginalized people, of which the poor are included in it, to realize their potentials as regards to the development of the society. So this strength-based approach usually emphasizes that the people should use the locally available resources, should use the wisdom that God freely gave them, so that the community is being empowered. The community development is being geared by the locally available resources in their area. So within the strength-based approach, we have a stage which we call discovering the past. In this stage, the participants or the most vulnerable community members are being helped to improve their confidence and also to be more creative, to come up with more ideas, development ideas that can change their society. So we normally involve all the groups of people in this case, not only those that are able to talk, able to speak in the matters of the society, but Karatas Malawi deliberately involve the most vulnerable people, such as the poor, to give their ideas on how they wish their community to develop in that line. Secondly, Kairos Malawi also makes sure that the community members are being involved, the most vulnerable people, the poor are being involved in the development of actions plan that needs to be implemented in a specific period of time. These actions plan normally are developed by the community members themselves with their ideas, and these ideas, Kairos Malawi makes sure that they are coming from all sorts of people, the old, the youth, the disability people. Everyone should be incorporated in this, and the poor, they are there to give their ideas also, so that the community in which they are living should be a better place for everyone. So Kairos Malawi, with deliberate efforts, makes sure that the poor are included in the development of this actions plan. How do we do this? Kairos Malawi sometimes makes sure that the papers, some Scrabble papers are distributed to the community members, irrespective of the status of the person, of the economic status of the person. So the poor will also have a chance to be given this paper, and on this paper, they are asked to write their visions, their ideas, what they want the community to be like in the near future. So in this case, Kairos Malawi makes sure that everyone is included in the development of the actions plan, the vision actions plans, which is going to benefit everyone in the community, not only those who are economically stable. So Kairos Malawi, with deliberate efforts, make sure that the poor are also targeted in this activity. As such, their views, their ideas, their beautiful ideas are always incorporated in the visions plans, and hence the community will benefit from everyone in the community, such that every activity, every developmental activity that is being taken place in the society is a contribution from every person in that society. Next. And then how Kairos Malawi is making sure to involve the poor. We have also another mechanism, which is, we call it a feedback mechanism. This mechanism makes sure that the most vulnerable people in the society are giving feedback to Kairos Malawi, to the project implementers. How do they do this? We normally provide suggestion boxes in all the areas where Kairos Malawi is working, so that the poor or the most vulnerable people, these people, as my previous speaker Maria said, they are the people who do not want to talk when they are on the group of people, because their views, their ideas are always regarded as useless sometimes. So they wish to stay back without talking. However, when you support them, when you provide them with a suggestion box, they will be able to write something on the paper and they drop it in the suggestion box. Hence, these suggestions, these ideas are always taken care by Kairos Malawi, and we know that most of the suggestions in these suggestion boxes comes from the poor people, because they know that they cannot talk at the group, but at least they can provide their idea in the suggestion boxes. So, for example, during the designing stage of the project, Kairos Malawi sometimes normally do what is called also the preliminary consultations, where community members, especially the vulnerable, are also consulted to be given a chance to articulate on how they wish the projects to be implemented in their area, because the projects in their area is not the projects for the well-to-do, but it's the projects for everyone in the society. So even the poor themselves, they need to see the benefits of the project. They need to take hand in the implementation of the project. So in this way, by involving them, by consulting them on how best they wish the projects to be done in their area, Karatas Malawi makes sure that the poor or the most vulnerable people are really involved in this activity. I have some pictures here. Yeah, if you can go down, I have some pictures. The first picture shows a group of people being given a number of papers so that they can write what they feel the project should be. This is one of the exercises which I have just said that we call it the preliminary consultations, where community members are involved, deliberately asked to give their views on how they wish the projects should be done in their area. I have another picture here, which is a map. This map is called the vision map. I said in my presentation that the community members are helped to develop the community, the vision map, which they put in all the institutions, all the details of how they wish their area should be looking like. It should look like at the end, maybe 3 or 5 years to come. So this is another example of the actions plan. When they are developing the actions plan, they also provide this the vision map. The action plan and the vision map, they talk to each other. Okay, I have another picture here, which is also another example of how Karatas Malawi involves the poor in the society during the preliminary consultations, how the community wishes the project which is coming to be handled, and their ideas also are taken care by Karatas Malawi, so that throughout the implementation, everyone is taken aboard, including the poor. I have another picture down there, which is picture number 3. Number 4. This picture shows a group of women. This group of women have been economically empowered through one of the projects that Karatas Malawi is doing. These women were given the startups to study the village saving banks. Now they meet, and some of them have benefited a lot, while others are still coming up with their contributions to the group. So this is one way of on how Karatas Malawi is helping economically empowering the most vulnerable people. As you can see, we have more women there than men, and most of them are poor or were poor and have been transformed through the same. Thank you for listening. That is the end of my presentation. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Vincent, for that. Really another very rich contribution to our discussion today. I think if I could highlight one point, it's the emphasis that you placed on the importance of institutional commitment to structured and targeted dialogue, listening, and inclusion, because sometimes it doesn't just happen naturally, and we need those structures to help really push along inclusion and valuing the voices of all people. So thank you. We do have space now for some discussion. If there are questions or comments, our 2 speakers, Maria Losa and Vincent, and also Sophie, they're all here with us. So you can direct questions to any of them. And we also do have here today Rebecca Rathbone, who is our officer promoting youth leadership, and Monsignor Pierre Chibambo, who we are very happy to have with us. He is our ecclesial assistant here at Caritas Internationalis. So please, the floor is open to everybody if you have any questions or comments. if you do, I encourage you just to speak, because I can't see if you raise your hand on Zoom or anything. So please do just jump in if you want to. Well, I think I'll I'll ask a question. This is to Vincent. When thinking about these institutional commitments, as you've told us about within Karatas Malawi, how I'd like to know more about how you, or if you engage with other local institutions, or also how you engage with the local church in terms of parishes, right up to then the Bishops' Conference, and what sort of engagement you have with those.
Well, thanks for your question. Karatas Malawi always engages with all the stakeholders, starting from the national level up to the local level. Whenever we are studying a project, Karatas Malawi makes sure that all the local level, as I said at the area beginning, are involved, and they are involved even in the planning of the project, in the designing of the project. These local levels, local communities, including the VDCs, the village development committees, the area development committees, even the local leaders, they are all involved in the designing or in the planning of the project. And being a church institution, a church organization, Karatas Malawi also makes sure that all the structures of the church are also involved in the implementation of all the projects. In areas where Karatas Malawi is working, it is always recommended that the parish priests, the ordinaries in that area are aware of the project. Therefore, they cannot be aware if you cannot engage them. So we normally involve them at the beginning, at the middle, and at the end of the project. We do the activities, while we do the implementation of all the interventions together or with their knowledge. That's how I can respond to your question. I don't know if that's okay.
Thank you very much. That's really, really helpful to know. Also for us here in Caritas Internationalis, it's just as important for us to listen and learn. So thank you. I think there's another question from Chimwemwe, I think.
Yes, please. It's Chimwemwe from Karatas Malawi as well. For me, it's not a question. I just wanted to add on what Vincent has said in responding to the question which was raised. I think he has ably responded, but maybe just to add on it, with the bishops, as Karatas Malawi, we also have a bishop chair within the conference. So in all our projects, we do engage him, who also on our behalf also engages the other bishops in the conference. So they are aware of what we are doing, and we also do report during each and every meetings, their plenary meetings. As a commission, we are supposed to report. So we highlight all the projects that we are implementing, as well as those that we are planning to implement, just to keep them in the loop of what we are doing. So as he has said, Vincent, I think we all engage everyone, including the bishops as well. Just an additional, thank you.
Thank you, Chimwemwe. That's really helpful contribution as well. So thank you. Are there any other questions?
Yeah. Steffi, this is Charan from Caritas Bangladesh.
Okay, go ahead.
So thank you very much. It was very it enriched me. Both panelists, I thank on behalf of Caritas Bangladesh. I would like to know from them that how do you involving youths, especially do you have any kind of a form of groups or something as who can contribute to your projects or contribute in the youth society? And another thing Vincent told, they are involving the community people, taking action with them. Ending of the project, behind the project, how they are involving, how they are continuing their activities with that community, or how community are involving those activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Chayon. I think if we let Malia Losa answer the first question, perhaps about how youth are actually involved, and then Vincent, you can answer the second question, which was directed to you. Thanks.
Sorry, Rebecca, if it's okay, I might just briefly answer for Malia Losa. She's unfortunately not able to access her audio. She is here and perhaps might chat, put a response in the chat. But from Caritas Oceania, we do have a youth alliance with representatives from each of our 7 member organisations. And each of those youth representatives are part of youth engagement activities at the local level. I know in Karatas Tonga, where Malia Losa is working, they have a really strong network of youth volunteers and work very closely with the formal youth group within the diocese to support particularly their disaster risk reduction and resilience programming. So we're engaging really closely with young people, giving them the skills and experience to support their communities in preparing for and responding to natural disasters, which is, you know, one of the biggest threats to ongoing development in the Pacific region. So definitely throughout the region, there is really strong youth engagement and youth leadership across our programming. And Malia Losa, if you have anything to add in that, perhaps you could pop it into the chat for everyone to see. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you, Sophie. And of course, Malia Losa, feel absolutely free to write a response as well. And the second question, I think, was about coordinating activities, and that was directed to Vincent.
Hello, Rebecca. Can you please rephrase the question? I did not get it clearly.
Chayon, would you mind just rephrasing your question for Vincent, please? Thank you.
Yes, Vincent, you showed your picture and also shared that you are taking a project, and from the planning level up to implementation level, you're involving the people, beneficiaries. So ending of the project, how do you involve, how they play their role? Or if you finished your project, then the activities is ended or they are continuing?
So in terms of project planning up to implementation, is your question, how are the youth involved in that in Caritas Malawi?
All right, thank you. I think if I've got the question clearly, as you rephrased also by Rebecca, says through the from the designing point to maybe the closing of the project, how are the youth being involved? I think that's the question.
Yes, that's right.
All right, thank you. As I said, Caritas Malawi always involves all the stakeholders in the society and also at national level. So during the designing stage of the project, the youths are involved in the sense that the Caritas officials usually visit the sites of the project and then gather information. Sometimes, as I said, we call it the preliminary consultations. These preliminary consultations, all the people in the society, all the vulnerable people in the society, the youth, women, everyone is involved, asked separately, asked on how they wish the project to be implemented. So in some of their resources, actually they also they presses themselves into the projects, such that during the implementation, Karatas Malawi makes sure that it takes care of all those suggestions. So if the youth, for example, said that we should be involved maybe in doing ABCD, for example, in food security, Karatas Malawi may identify a group of the youth, and they form, let's say, a cooperative, and then they evolve in agriculture products. These agricultural products are being sold on a cooperative as a youth group. So all the youth groups are also involved in the implementation of the project. Some of the youths are maybe organized to be in a group, for example, let's say in climate change adaptations and mitigations. They are in a group, and then they are empowered, they are given training so that they should go out there into the villages and also train other people on how they can mitigate the factors or the effects of climate change. So yes, sure, the youths are always involved in each and every stage of the projects. During the closing phase of the project, Karatas Malawi will always go back to the community, gather everyone, the local communities, the leaders, and the youth, the women, everyone. Those people who were also involved at the inception of the project, they are also invited at the closure of the project, and then ask them how the project has fared to them, and then Karatas Malawi will evaluate those resources and see how best to implement the other subsequent projects. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you to those who asked questions and for those insightful answers. So it just leaves me to make a few final closing comments. I think that today has been a really very productive and useful experience of learning and sharing, particularly about how to make space for all people, making time for them, making sure that we include all voices, men and women, young and old people, and showing how this diversity of perspectives can bring new and innovative approaches to dialogue and decision making. The importance of involving everybody, institutions from the local level right up to the national level is also really important. And that concept of community sharing and mutual growth together. I think that one of the things that I really enjoyed hearing actually from both speakers, and I think the final point, is that it is through this listening and dialogue and inclusion of all voices that really unexpected, surprising and creative outcomes and solutions can come from this listening and dialogue. I think that, you know, we sometimes think of difference as being a bad thing, but actually it's a great thing. And this we've really learned today about the importance of diversity and inclusion as well. So that leaves me just to make a brief advert at the end now for our next webinar, which is being held on Friday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Rome time. And this will be about serving, accompanying, and defending the poor, as Pope Francis has urged us to do. If you head over to the Caritas Internationalis website, there is a lot more information about that second webinar and about this whole week from prayer to action, celebrating the World Day of the Poor and World Youth Day. So I urge you all to get involved, take part in the calendar and in our webinar, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much from Caritas
Bye.
Iran. It was very interesting.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.